You know this actor, right? Patton Oswalt. Funny dude, does stand up, acts in movies, voices cartoon characters. The kind of guy you expect to help you laugh through a bad day. Well, turns out indirectly, he may have helped police catch one of the most terrifying serial killers America had ever seen. And no, Patton didn't suddenly turn into Sherlock Holmes between comedy gigs. It was his wife, Michelle McNamara, who became obsessed with a faceless predator terrorizing California. While most people were binge watching Netflix, Michelle was spending her nights flipping through police files, shoe prints, and DNA reports. Here's the kicker. Her obsession, her book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, lit the fire that pushed this cold case back into the spotlight. And that spotlight? It burned a 70-something ex-cop named Joseph James DeAngelo straight out of hiding. So let's break it down. First up, Michelle McNamara. She wasn't a cop. She wasn't an FBI agent. She was a writer. Just a woman with a laptop, way too much curiosity, and a stubborn streak that could outlast a tank. She grew up in Oak Park, Illinois, but she carried those Irish Catholic roots that gave her this mix of empathy and grit. By the time she hit her 40s, she wasn't just a true crime fan, she was basically living inside the case files. Then there's Patton Oswalt. Yeah, the funny guy. He was on stage telling jokes about everyday life, while at home his wife was piecing together the puzzle of a ghost serial killer. Imagine that dynamic, one partner memorizing punchlines, the other memorizing blood types and shoe sizes. Wild. And finally, the so-called ghost, Joseph James DeAngelo, a former cop, a man who looked like your cranky uncle yelling about lawn sprinklers. But behind that suburban disguise, a trail of rapes, murders, and break-ins stretching across decades. When he was finally exposed, he was in his mid-70s, hiding in plain sight the whole time. Back in 2006, Michelle McNamara launched a blog called True Crime Diary. Now, most blogs are about food, travel, or people oversharing their relationship drama. Michelle's blog, Cold Cases, Unsolved Murders, Rapists Who Thought They Got Away. She basically turned her corner of the internet into a crime lab. By the way, speaking of crime blogs, I've got one too called crimepulsefiles.com. Go check it out. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll crack a case together. Anyway, back to Michelle. She stumbled on the monster. At the time, cops were juggling nicknames. The East Area Rapist, the original Night Stalker. Sounded like some messed up comic book villains. Too many names, no single identity. Everyone was confused. Michelle looked at the evidence, old police sketches, shoe prints, DNA reports stacked like Jenga blocks, and she started connecting the dots. She realized these weren't different guys. It was one man. One predator who had been terrorizing California for decades. And that's when she did something cops hadn't done. She branded him. She gave him a single name, one that stuck, the Golden State Killer. Overnight, it wasn't just a bunch of scattered crimes. It was a legend. And legends, they get hunted. So Michelle wasn't just content with writing blog posts and dropping internet bombs about unsolved cases. She decided to go bigger. A book. The ultimate deep dive into this faceless predator who had haunted California for decades. She called it I'll Be Gone in the Dark. And let me tell you, this wasn't some lightweight bedtime read. Michelle was pulling all-nighters, combing through police reports, interviewing detectives, mapping out crime scenes like she was planning a bank heist. Her house basically turned into an FBI archive, except without the government funding. But then tragedy. In 2016, Michelle died suddenly at age 46. The official cause? A lethal mix of undiagnosed heart disease and prescription medication. Just like that, she was gone. The killer was still free, the book unfinished, and the world had lost one of the sharpest amateur detectives it had ever seen. Here's the wild part though. Michelle had left behind stacks of notes, drafts, and timelines. It wasn't polished, but it was a roadmap. Her obsession didn't die with her. After Michelle's death, her husband Patton Oswalt refused to let her work fade. He teamed up with writer Billy Jensen and investigator Paul Holes. Together, they pieced her mountain of notes into a full book. And in early 2018, I'll Be Gone in the Dark finally hit shelves, and it blew up. Readers weren't just hooked, they were obsessed. True crime fans devoured it, internet forums lit up, podcasts dissected every page. It was like Michelle had lit a fuse, and the whole world suddenly wanted this killer caught. Even cops admitted it. They didn't say, "Yeah, Michelle solved it for us." But they did admit her book kept the case alive, kept tips rolling in, and kept pressure on law enforcement. Basically, she made sure the Golden State Killer couldn't slip back into obscurity. And then the timing got spooky. Just 2 months after the book dropped, in April 2018, police arrested Joseph James DeAngelo, a retired cop living in the suburbs like some cranky grandpa. The ghost finally had a face. So, how did they actually catch this guy after all those decades? DNA. The killer thought he was untouchable because back in the 1970s and 1980s, forensics was basically just magnifying glasses and gut instinct. But science caught up. Investigators took old DNA samples from crime scenes and uploaded them to GEDmatch, a public genealogy website. You know, the same kind people use to find out if their great-grandpa was Irish or just lying about it. From there, detectives built out a family tree, and at the top of that tree, Joseph James DeAngelo. When cops zeroed in on him, they followed him around, grabbed stuff he touched, and tested it. Boom! The DNA matched. Years of horror, and this cranky old ex-cop couldn't escape his own genetics. And then Patton Oswalt, the comedian who had been cheering from the sidelines, went online and said, "Michelle, you got him." It was emotional, brutal, and weirdly poetic. The killer was in cuffs, but the woman who made it possible wasn't alive to see it. Now you might be wondering, what's the Irish angle in all this? Michelle wasn't just any true crime writer. She was Irish American, raised Catholic, and carried that whole mix of toughness and empathy that comes with it. Her family background was steeped in those roots. And here's the deeper cut. Michelle actually spent time in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. She witnessed the tension, the fear, the constant awareness that violence could erupt at any moment. That kind of environment leaves a mark. It gave her this lens, this way of seeing the world where justice wasn't just about punishment, it was about dignity and truth. She even survived an assault while she was there. That experience didn't shut her down. If anything, it fueled her obsession with giving victims a voice and dragging predators out of the shadows. You can feel that Irish-tinged empathy on every page of her book. So yeah, in a way, Ireland shaped the mindset that made Michelle McNamara the perfect person to chase down the Golden State Killer. Her roots gave her the resilience, her writing gave her the weapon, and her obsession that was the spark. Here's the part that sticks with you. Michelle McNamara gave the killer his name. She mapped out his crimes, connected the dots, and wrote the blueprint that would lead straight to him. But when Joseph James DeAngelo was finally unmasked in April of 2018, Michelle wasn't there to see it. She had already been gone for 2 years. The book she left behind became her voice from beyond the grave. It kept the hunt alive, it kept the public screaming for answers, and it pushed law enforcement to finally use the technology that nailed him. So the haunting kicker. The woman who named the Golden State Killer, who gave the world the clue map to catch him, was herself gone in the dark, just like the title of her book. Her obsession didn't end. It outlived her. It caught him. It stopped him. But she never got the satisfaction of seeing him dragged into court in chains. The ghost she chased, he outlived her. And that's the part that gives you chills. Sometimes the hero isn't the cop with the badge. Sometimes it's the writer with the will. And that's the story right there. A comedian's wife, a blogger turned detective, an Irish-American woman who refused to let go of a faceless killer. Michelle McNamara didn't just write a book, she wrote a trap. And Joseph James DeAngelo, the so-called Golden State Killer, walked right into it decades later. It's ironic, it's tragic, it's kind of poetic. The guy who thought he'd never be caught was finally exposed because a writer obsessed over his every move. And the sad part, she never saw the ending of the story she wrote. So, next time someone tells you true crime fans are just wasting time on the internet, remember this. Sometimes the fan with a blog is the one who actually helps solve the case.